I built a workbench recently, and I'm going to share 5 key things that you need to keep in mind when you're building your workbench. Plus, I'm going to share a bonus tip on the structural integrity of this workbench and let you know a mistake that you don't want to make yourself. The first one, height. One of the things that you need to keep in mind when you build your own workbench is they come in different sizes. The average workbench will come somewhere between 38 and 46 inches. I'm a little bit taller than most. I'm 5'11" on a good day, and I tend to wear shoes or flip-flops in the garage. So when I'm walking around, I'm just a little bit taller than that. And sometimes I stand on a mat for fatigue because, well, you know, let's face it, I'm over 30. Well, I'm over 40. But anyway, I walk on a mat sometimes for fatigue, and that puts me up even taller. And with casters on the bottom of the workbench, one of the things that I really needed was a workbench height that was just slightly below my elbow so that when I was working on things on top of the workbench, I wouldn't be hunched over on it. And I love the height of this workbench. It's around 41, 42 inches. It's absolutely perfect for me, but you may want something that's a different size. So you need to measure from your elbow down to the floor, determine what that is, subtract maybe 1 or 2 inches from that, and that should be the height of your workbench. Don't make the mistake of making something that's too low or too tall. Make sure that you're including things like casters and other things on the bottom of your workbench when you do those calculations, and anything else that you might be standing on when you're in your shop building. Next one for me is incorrect measurements, and this one was just my own stupid mistake. I had measured down from the side of this workbench. I measured down 5 inches on one side, did the cutout, measured down 6 inches from the other side, and built another half lap joint into that leg, mounted the shelf, and found out that it was lopsided. And to this day, it still bothers me that I made that mistake. And quite honestly, I might take it out and fix it one day, but I'd have to remove an entire leg and cut a whole new half lap joint. And it's really not worth it to just be an inch off. Mostly it's just me that notices it. Other people will kind of rib me and say, hey, is this thing, you know, just because they know that I made that mistake. But for the most part, when you're building your workbench, make sure that you check those measurements twice and that you're accurate about all of them. I don't know what your purpose for your workbench is, but for me, it's building picture frames. It's something that I love to do, and I need this super wide surface at 4 foot by at least 4 foot, sometimes 5 or 6 feet long to build picture frames. And I do this to wrap canvas around them, but ultimately, I don't actually need to clamp a whole lot to the side of it. That's probably uncommon. I think most people do use the side of their workbenches to clamp, and even take a clamp like this, a cheap vise off of Amazon or something. Because I ran a 2x4 all the way around the outside of it and secured the top to the 2x4 at that edge, I have no clamp edge. So if I had just recessed those 2x4s and built the frame in just a little bit smaller, I would have more room to actually put a clamp like this on the edge. As it stands right now, I have to use super wide clamps to clamp to the bottom of the 2x4 that's running around the outside lip. There is no lip on my workbench. And when you build yours, that may be something that you want to take into consideration, and especially with building anything, leave yourself an edge to clamp on, because there's a lot of need for that. And every once in a while I'm working on something different and find myself in need of a clamp edge, and I may ultimately have to cut one out because I don't really have anything on this workbench. So when you build yours, make sure that's something you keep in mind. Tip number 4 is surface protection. And when you're building the top of your workbench, depending on what kind of material you use, this is maple plywood, and it feels like it's laminated surfaces on top of each other. One of the things that I didn't do when I made a cross cut on it was protect the surface with painter's tape or something else before I cut it. And because I didn't do that, the top edges of it scuffed up along the edge of the cut. And it doesn't really matter what saw you use. Just about any saw is going to rip that top edge up if you don't do something to protect it. Now, on the second cut, I actually did put painter's tape down, and I made the same cut and didn't have any of that breakage. It's really unfortunate, but something to keep in mind, depending on what you're going to do on your workbench top. If you're painting, if you're doing things, you may, it may end up junky one day, and it may not make any difference to you what the top looks like. It may just be a straight workbench, but if you'd like something that looks good and continues to look good while you're using it, make sure that you protect those edges, especially if you're sanding around the edge or cutting through the top or whatever to make a table saw hole on it. I'm going to add a router table to this one soon, so stay tuned for that project coming up. Make sure that when you do that, you protect those edges as you cut. So this is one of the comments that I've actually had on my workbench build video, is that it's as big as an aircraft carrier. And yeah, you could say that. It's 4 feet by 8 feet. It really does take up a third of a single space in a 2-car garage. For me, that's fine. We don't park anything in here other than a golf cart. So it really doesn't have a big impact on the amount of room that I need to work around the sides of the workbench. But for some people, that's too much because it's not something that you can just wheel away and store and put another car in if you ever need to. This thing is here. It's here to stay, and it's on casters, but there's really nowhere you could put it that would allow you to still pull a car in the garage. So I knew that. I was conscious of it when I built it. I needed the space. I needed somewhere to put the table saw, and this is just what worked out for me. You may need something that's a little bit smaller, but think about, maybe you want something half this size and you can put it in a corner and it won't take up near the room that this one takes up when I'm building out picture frames. And I'm fine with that. It's okay. We don't need to park anything else in the garage, but you may have a different purpose. This is just one of the picture frames that I build and wrap on this canvas. This actually happens to be a waterfall in Tbilisi, Georgia, in the botanical gardens. It was one of the coolest shoots that I've done. I really enjoyed traveling and shooting this, but I build all kinds of picture frames and canvas frames on this workbench, and it's perfect for what I need. And this one probably should go without saying, but it's kind of a bonus tip. So when you're building that workbench, think about some of the structural integrity of it. I mean, if I had just gone with 2 legs on this, it probably would have sagged in the middle. And I mean 2 legs on each side and no leg support in the middle, it probably would have sagged. And that wouldn't have been good. I want the surface to remain flat on the top. Another thing that I did was sort of a cantilever design on the table saw. I made an entire video about correcting that flaw in there and putting it in a half lap joint and another 2x4 so that the saw doesn't sag in the front. The back of it's supported just fine because it has a board that goes all the way across, like sort of like a floor joist that keeps it plumb to the top. But another thing to think about when you're building your workbench is something to keep it in line and in shape with what you want. There's tons of little knickknacks all around it. I've got tape measure hangers on each corner of it so that I always have a tape measure that's within easy access of where I'm standing. I've got T-square hangers on both corners of it so that I can grab a square if I need to grab a square if I'm doing something. And because I like to be somewhat organized, I do have a blower and a vacuum cleaner down below. I have multiple vacuum cleaners. There's the vacuum cleaner that's built in to take the sawdust from the table saw, and then there's a second vacuum cleaner that's portable that I can just reach down and grab at any point when I need it. And if there's a battery in it, suck up excess sawdust that's on the table while I'm using it. Since I built this, I've seen some fantastic workbenches out there. So if you're building one, let us know down in the comments. I would love to see it. I love getting new ideas from different people for workbenches. And I think this one suits me. And the best part about building it is that you can customize it to your own needs. You can customize it to your size. You can customize it to your height. You can customize it to whatever projects that you think you'll be completing on there. Next up, I'm going to be adding a router table to this workbench. I'm also going to be adding some drawers to it to store some of the tools and other things out of the way. And I think the jury's kind of still out on whether or not I want to build the drawers myself or if I want to use, maybe a pre-manufactured drawer like the DeWalt T-Sac drawers. I did order some. I was thinking about mounting them up underneath the workbench, but maybe I can build those drawers myself and just share that with you guys as well. So stay tuned, like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And I'll make sure that you get notifications when I post the next video. I also have some other exciting stuff. I do a lot of stuff on this channel, and another one that I'm really excited about is a completely remote controlled sports wagon that you can use at, softball and soccer tournaments and things like that that'll haul around your cooler. It's driven by a joystick. So much fun. Something you're going to want to stay tuned for. I'll be working on those videos, but please like and subscribe, and I'll continue to push out more. Thanks for watching.